Call to order the Lynchburg Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. First order of business is the approval of our May 11, 2022 minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look them over? Any corrections or any motion?
I move that we approve if there are no questions.
All right.
I'll second.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Great. The next order of business is the following new business. We will be hearing the petition of Freeman Family Enterprises LLC to rezone approximately 459 thousandths of an acre located at 2237 Rivermont Avenue from R3 medium density residential to R4 high density residential to allow the use of the existing structure as 10 apartment units. So Tom, if you...
Sure. Members of Planning Commission, the property is located in the Rivermont Historic District. The property contains a two-story brick veneer structure that was constructed in 1912 and contains 5,060 finished square feet according to city assessor records. This property was zoned for single-family uses up until 1960, at which time it was rezoned to R3, two-family residential. And under the 1960 zoning code, boarding houses were a use that was permitted by right. Most likely, the 7 existing units were put into place in 1965 when the property transferred ownership. The zoning ordinance changed again in 1978 with the rewrite of the ordinance after annexation, at which time the boarding house use was removed as a use permitted by right. And in 1978, the existing 7 units became non-conforming. The zoning ordinance defines a non-conforming use as any lawful use, whether of a building or other structure or a tract of land, which does not conform to the applicable use regulations of the district in which either it is located on the effective date of the zoning ordinance or as a result of subsequent amendments. Non-conforming uses are allowed to remain. However, they are not allowed to be expanded because the ultimate goal of zoning is to have uniformity and equal protection within zoning districts. The city's comprehensive plan recommends traditional residential uses for the area. These are typically the city's older neighborhoods constructed typically prior to World War II. The plan also lists this area, Rivermont Avenue, as a neighborhood conservation area and notes specifically that the conversion of these areas to rental units has resulted in their gradual deterioration. The proposal does indicate to have 6 parking spaces behind the structure. This has gone to the Historic Preservation Commission, which granted a certificate of approval to allow the 6 spaces to be constructed out of brown pea gravel. However, something that still needs to be determined is how the public alley will be improved, as the city does not maintain or improve alleyways. While staff has no issue with the non-conforming use remaining because it is legal, however, it is opposed to the rezoning of the property to allow the additional units. In your packet was a surrounding residential use map, and you can see that the majority of the structures in this block in the area conform to the existing R3 zoning, which allows single-family homes or duplexes. The former Garland Hill property across the avenue was rezoned for apartments in 2016, yet this is not an equal comparison, as that zoning allowed the adaptive reuse of a large institutional type building. Rezoning this property without valid reasoning would start establishing inconsistent zoning patterns in the area, which staff believes could be ultimately detrimental, as other property owners may wish to follow suit. With this, the Planning Division does recommend denial of the rezoning request.
Thank you, Tom. Who's here to speak on behalf of this petition? If you could please come forward, state your name and sign. And you could tell us more about this, please.
Well, good afternoon. Good to see you all again. I'm Amy Sipe with Ag Point Surveying and Design, frequent flyer here at the Planning Commission. Last time I was here, you told me to go find some reuse, so I tried to find some reuse for you. But as Mr. Martin discussed, this is an existing apartment building on Rivermont Avenue, 2237 Rivermont. If you're familiar with the area, it's directly across from the park entrance. This building has been apartments for quite some time. The majority of the residents in this area accept it as an apartment building. Unfortunately, it has come into disrepair. Dr. Freeman and his family are planning to bring it back to life, which I think is a great option for folks in this area. It is on one of the, if not the largest parcel on this side, other than the Garland Roads school and then the old dormitory buildings, which, as mentioned, are have been recently converted. There is no plan to change the outside of the building, and it has been approved for historic tax credits. And so in order to help offset some of the costs, that would be the method of using tax credits for that purpose. The additional units would only be added in areas that are currently not space that's for apartments, so the units inside are not going to be carved up or chopped up into, substandard units. It will be the unfinished attic space that would be converted to units just because of the way it lends itself, as well as the walkout basement. The parking area, as mentioned, would become pea gravel, which is an acceptable method for the historic use. Dr. Freeman and his in his plan would like to pave or whatever is acceptable to the city, whatever surface would be acceptable, since the city does not maintain alleys, but he is committed to improving and maintaining the alley at his own cost to help with the parking situation. And other projects that we've done that have been redevelopment are in areas that I know one of the things has been discussed of B4 and on-street and off-street parking. So we've tried to listen to those and provide an off-street option. There's not much of a change as far as parking demands go, and there is on-street parking. I don't live in this specific area, so that some of the residents might say there's enough or not enough, but we've tried to make sure that the residents would have options for parking on the street or off the street in a safe manner. There are some buffers planned to be planted, vegetative buffers, just for general beautification and screening purposes, but Dr. Freeman is here and can elaborate more, but has spoken to the neighbors, and it has generally been well received. I think they're all in favor of it being rehabilitated and brought back to life to help the area. And if there's any specific questions, either myself, Casey Service with the architectural firm, ADO, or Dr. Freeman are happy to answer what questions you might have.
Thank you. And is there anybody here to speak in favor of this petition? Great. If you could.
Should I come up or?
Yes, please come forward, state your name, and there's a place to sign there on the podium.
My name is Steve Bartholomew. I live next door to the building at 2233 Rivermont Avenue. And I'm very familiar with the building and with the condition of the building. I've been helping some people that lived there for years. I don't know if you know them, but Rich and Karen Patterson. And he was blind and had a lot of physical problems. But I think it sounds to me like they're planning to upgrade the building, which would be a real benefit to the city. And the one thing that I would suggest is, I just heard for the first time that the parking, they're planning on 6 spaces out back. It's a fairly large area out back if it's fully utilized. I wonder if it might be wise to consider 10 spaces. If there's 10 apartments, you're probably going to have at least 10 cars. So that's the only suggestion that I would make.
Great, thank you. Could you please sign your name there also before
Yeah,
you
okay.
step away?
Yep.
Is there anybody else here to speak in favor of the petition? Okay. Anybody to speak in opposition? Anybody opposed to this, or have we had any? Think so? Okay, great. If you could read that, that would be great.
To whom it may concern, I would like to give my robust approval for the proposed zoning change for Mr. Brian Freeman. As a resident of Rivermont Avenue, I find it inspiring that an investor has taken on a project of this magnitude for the betterment of the avenue and Lynchburg. Please reward investing in the community and approve the project at 2237 Rivermont Avenue.
Does they have a name?
Yes, sorry, Brett Schiller.
Great, thank you. Okay, not seeing any opposition, I can go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this and open up for discussion.
So I'll leave this here, right?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Well, I know we've had these discussions before when petitions have come up, you know, and city council has made it clear they want us to try to protect neighborhoods. As Mr. Martin noted, you know, I've got a lot of problem with recommending the change because of the effect on the houses that are in there. I mean, I know there are some other, I mean, most of the houses are single family, but there are some multiple unit, but I think they're all either 2 or 3, maybe there's 1 4-unit house, but there's none of them that are as many as 7 right now. And I do worry that if we grant the change, if the change is granted, that the effect it's going to have on not only the single family houses that may want to go multi, but the multi units that say, well, maybe we can get 5 units in here, 4 units in here, and what it ultimately does, I think, is degrade the neighborhood.
I had just a specific question. There was concerns about the alley and maintenance, since the city does not assume that. Does that alley runs behind more than one property? So does it just kind of take care of as needed by the owners?
It'll
Right.
have to be because the city won't maintain it.
And that's the current situation
Yes.
as well for the others.
On that particular situation, maybe this isn't the right word, how does the ownership of that property, it's not an easement exactly,
No, it's public right of way that we just don't maintain
we just don't maintain it?
or improve, yes.
Because the other question I had, looks like on the plan here, which may be my lack of reading, it only looks like it's paved part way. Is that true? It's only going behind really a portion and a half, a lot and a half? Or would they go ahead?
I
Because
think
assuming it go all the way
ultimately-
up to the alley.
well,
No, you know,
ultimately-
to Columbia, rather.
Ultimately, they'll have to do something out to Columbia, which I believe you just heard Ms. Sipe say that they're willing to do. But of course, that anything will have to be worked out with the city engineer.
Sure. I mean, the only situation in that would be, and I just don't know how that would work from a legal standpoint, from the standpoint of, in my mind, it's a driveway, except that you've taken over that property, essentially. And I'm not sure how that plays out.
You see in a lot of rural areas where people have a common right-of-way where they get together and they pay a yearly fee.
Sure.
And it always seems like there's one homeowner who refuses to be part of that, and yet they benefit from everyone else doing it. So, you know.
I want to be clear, staff's not opposed to use of the alley at all. And we would hope that the engineering division could work out some way to allow that if this is or isn't approved for the parking. Our concern is purely with establishing different zoning patterns in that area and how it could lead to others' conversions in the corridor.
Dr. Freeman, if I could, I believe in your note, there was a line that said that what was driving this was really making it financially viable as an apartment building, if I remember that wording correctly? Okay, all right. Because I think what I'm struggling with is, you know, we've got a lot of properties in Lynchburg that are in this kind of situation. And we've got, you know, the reality of the story is we've got things that are going to take money to get fixed. So I'm sort of struggling between exactly what you're talking about, Tom, and then on the other hand, seeing you've got something that's crumbling in the neighborhood that you'd like to get built up and cleaned up, to Mr. Bartholomew's comments. And that's really kind of where I'm hung right now.
I agree somewhat. I think that we have voted in favor of several properties, and City Council has too, in which there was an upgrade in zoning that, you know, and I understand the school across the street, you know, that's probably the best use for that building was apartments, and the old Seven Hills building, that was probably the best use for that, to turn it into apartments. And we've also done it, you know, further closer to downtown on the right, before you cross the bridge. We've rezoned several of those down there because that was the best use for the building. And I get it, but I also think you've done some 2 or 3 homes. You've let them change into bed and breakfasts. You know, that's an upgrade in zoning, you know, because that was the best use for their property. And so I'm looking at this, and I agree with Bob. I mean, it's falling apart. I mean, and the money that is going to have to go into upgrading it and making it, you know, anyway, I struggle with it. I'm not quite sure. Because we have allowed it. It has been allowed.
Can I ask a question? I don't know how.
If you would like to pose a question, that'd be fine.
Okay.
If you would come forward, so it can be on public record.
I appreciate all your reservations. And one thing that occurs to me as I'm listening to you is, ideally, I think that it would be better if it was converted to 6 or 7 apartments rather than 10. I think 10 might be kind of stretching it, but I imagine that in terms of financial viability, you've calculated that you got to have 10, right? I mean, or else it's not going to work. So that's the only comment that I can make. Obviously, if it was 6 or 7 and you charge considerably more, that would still work. But can you get it there? You know, that's Thank you.
Yeah, I would. So being a Rivermont Avenue resident, I think my biggest concern here is that change in zoning. And yes, we have changed zoning. For example, I live 2 doors from the school that was changed, and I do think, you know, there was a lot of angst about that in the community. Created a lot of divisions, actually, and I supported the school. I think the thing is, when we get into a small space in a house, you know, knowing people who have bought these homes and fixed them up as single-family homes, and it has 7 existing apartments, you know, I would lean towards more keeping it in the conforming model rather than a change to an R4, because then what I would say is then my neighbor might likely actually do the same thing, and then what ground can I stand on at that point and say, no, you can't? Because I've already let it go somewhere else. And I think that's this, you get into like a spot zoning where it becomes a danger because it is not the same property as the school. It's not the same property as Seven Hills. It's very similar to the former sales property down the road, which is apartments. And I think that might be a non-conforming use as well. It has multiple apartments, but it's always had the same apartments, but they bought it and then invested heavily and raised the rent and changed the model that way. I don't think they ever came to us they might have come for a reason, but I didn't see it here I was looking for it in the list. So you might be familiar with that property. So that would be more my leaning, just as a care and concern for this neighborhood. I think the city has been trying to really work to make this a neighborhood that it started really falling apart. I've been around to see it. I've been there. We bought in 2002, and now we're starting to see it actually on a rebound. And a sign of it falling apart in the past was more people put into a building, more apartments in a building, dividing houses up. So that's my reservation with it. If you'd like to come forward, you haven't spoken, but I'd be glad to hear it.
Brian Freeman, once again, thank y'all for having me. So I'd address what you said, Mr. Rogers, about one of the signs historically of homes or neighborhoods going into disrepair or becoming less desirable was more density in each property. And I think historically that may have been the case, but if you look at it over the last 2 or 3 years, especially in that area on Rivermont, the person who Brett, I know Brett, and so he told me, and I agree with this, and what we've seen on Rivermont is that middle and lower Rivermont were like the worst areas on Rivermont historically, and you've noticed that with high density. But you've seen on lower Rivermont what they've done with adding apartments and what what that's done to the neighborhood. And as well on Middle Rivermont, I've sent you the email showing you the properties on Middle Rivermont which have high density. And despite that, though, that area is turning around actually. And what I'm proposing is not to create shabby apartments and fill them up with just anybody. What I'm trying to create is a high value property utilizing the current framework. So I'm not asking to take a single family home and to chop it up into 10 units. I'm asking to leave the property as it is on the outside, keep its character on the outside, and just utilize the empty space. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm asking. And to create very high quality apartments for hopefully high quality tenants who want to stay there and help beautify the neighborhood, such as the sales house like you mentioned. Because I know those people over there. So so I think historically that may have been the case. I would say now in that particular area, I wouldn't say that was the case automatically. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Could I, I'm Casey Service.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm Casey Service with Architecture Design Office. We're working on the design of the structure, and just to speak to the precedent of rezoning, we took a look at all the parcels on the block, excluding Garland Roads, because it's obviously different. And part of our approach in asking for the R4 rezoning is that it does limit the density to 1 unit per 2,000 square feet of lot area, which this lot has. This lot is the largest on the block. There are 20 other lots other than Garland Roads and the park entrance. 15 of them are between 6,000 and less than 10,000, which would max out at 3 or 4 units per structure. And then the other 4 or 5 range from allowing somewhere between 5 and 7, one of which is already 4. And there are also smaller structures on those larger lots. So being in the historic district, it would be difficult to redevelop without expanding the envelope. So while this structure is not Garland Roads or it's Seven Hills School, it is its own unique piece because it's on a larger lot And it is a larger structure with the way the train comes in, the larger basement and the larger attic, that it has the capacity that the other lots, even if they saw this and said, hey, we want to rezone, it's not, none of the others are going to come close to 10 apartments. Thanks.
I caution you, again, our concern is what it's going to do to the entire corridor with the potential.
Right.
If you look at, the immediate area close to it, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parcels that are larger than this one, right? Ranging in size from 0.63 acres to 1.59 acres. So I don't think I would really put a lot of merit in that
Right.
that particular argument, correct.
Right. And my problem is not with your proposal per se. It's actually the following that, going to R4 and doing that. I could easily do the same thing with my yard with 1.25 acres, 1.5 acres, and I think that's it. But and a lot of people could do that, and I think it's a slippery slope. That's why I struggle with it. I really like the idea of taking that property. I know it very well, and it really is in bad shape and needs some TLC for sure. It's more a matter of like doing this specifically, and I feel like having been here for a while that this has been something that we've talked a lot about. Like, we're not going to go in and change this specifically, and there's a real logic behind it that is not rooted in the owner, but in the use of the property.
As I said, I don't want to repeat myself, but I applaud you, Dr. Freeman, because I'm happy that something positive could be done with the property, because I drive past it almost every day, and it does need TLC, and it does need to be upgraded. I take it at face value when you say you can't make the numbers work without the 10 units. But I think you can sense we're all struggling with the situation. But from a professional viewpoint, you've been very professional, and I applaud you for trying to save a place that obviously needs some TLC, as Tom said.
Any other thoughts on this?
We don't often get petitions where planning is recommending denial. And when they happen, I look for a reason why that's coming forward, and maybe I can look past that. And almost every time that happens, I really have learned to respect and agree with the planning staff's decision on that, because they usually have very good reasons for denying a petition. And I think that's true here.
Well, folks, I don't want to, terminate any discussion, but I'm going to make a motion that we deny the petition.
All right, would there be a second on that?
I'll second.
All right, put it to a vote, or first we have any other comments? Any other comments before we put it to a vote? Okay. All in favor of denying this petition, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. All right, I'm sorry, it did not pass, and you will be able to take it to City Council, and, I really wish you the best with the property. This is one of the harder ones that I've had to deal with, and I hope things do work out so that you're able to do something well with that property. But thank you. All right. Do we have any other business?
No, sir. We will be, hopefully in the near future, putting out an RFP to bring a consultant firm on board to start working on an update to the comp plan. So, we'll probably be bringing you a resolution to consider initiating that.
Okay. And any movement on another person to fill the seat?
Not that I'm aware, no, sir.
Can't believe people aren't excited about doing this.
I know.
I talk it up.
Well, in the interest of no further discussion, I move we adjourn.
Any second? All right, no opposition, so we're out of here.